German Shepherd finds a baby in the trash and rushes to the hospital. Everyone was in tears. What happened will shock you. The night wind howled through the empty streets of Millfield, a sound that made most living things seek shelter. Streetlights flickered, casting dancing shadows across the pavement, some dying out completely before sputtering back to life. It was past midnight, and the small town had long since gone to sleep, all except for Rex. Rex, a 3-year-old German Shepherd with a coat the color of midnight and amber eyes that seemed to glow in the dark, paced anxiously by the window of his owner's modest home. Something wasn't right. He couldn't explain it, even to himself, but a feeling, a pull, kept him from settling down for the night. His owner, an elderly man named Frank, had gone to bed hours ago, unaware of the dog's growing distress. Rex's ears twitched at every sound, his nose pressed against the cold glass of the window. The wind carried something strange tonight, something that made the fur on his back stand up. He whined softly, pawing at the door that led to the backyard. Frank had installed a dog door for him years ago, but Rex rarely used it at night. Tonight was different. He pushed through the flap and stepped into the biting cold, his breath forming clouds in the air. The pull was stronger now, an invisible thread tugging at something deep inside him. Rex lifted his nose to the wind and froze. There it was, faint, almost lost in the rustling of trees and distant traffic. A cry, not an animal's cry, not the howl of another dog or the screech of a cat. This was different, weak and desperate. Without hesitation, Rex took off running, following the sound that no human ear could have detected from this distance. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and every instinct in his body told him there wasn't much time. He darted through the gap in the fence that Frank had been meaning to fix, his powerful legs carrying him faster than he'd ever run before. The night blurred around him as he followed the pull, that strange cry growing louder with each block he passed. Left at the park, right past the closed convenience store, straight through the empty parking lot behind the row of restaurants that lined Main Street. The smell hit him first, rotting food, decay, the sharp scent of garbage that had been sitting too long in the dumpsters. But beneath it all was something else, something that didn't belong here. Rex slowed his pace, stepping carefully between trash bags that had spilled onto the dirty pavement. His nose worked overtime, filtering through the overwhelming stench until he found what he was looking for. There, behind the Italian restaurant, between two overflowing dumpsters, lay a small pile of black garbage bags, and on top, hastily thrown as if the person had been in a hurry, was what looked like a bundle of dirty rags. But Rex knew better. The crying had stopped, and that worried him more than anything. He approached cautiously, nudging the bundle with his nose. It was a blanket, once white perhaps, now stained and torn, soaked through from the light drizzle that had fallen earlier. His heart raced as he gently used his teeth to pull back a corner of the fabric. The sight made him whimper. A tiny human, no bigger than a loaf of bread, lay still and silent within the folds of the filthy blanket. Its skin was pale blue in the moonlight, tiny fingers curled into fists so small they were barely there at all. Rex could hear the baby's heartbeat, faint and irregular, struggling against the cold that threatened to steal it away. The infant's eyes fluttered open for a moment, unfocused and hazy, before closing again. A weak cry escaped its blue lips, barely audible even to Rex's sensitive ears. He nudged the baby gently with his nose, trying to share some warmth, but the tiny body only shivered in response. Something white caught Rex's eye, a small piece of paper pinned to the edge of the blanket. It was soaked through, the ink running in blue streams across the surface, making most of the words impossible to read. But one word remained clear, written in larger letters than the rest. Help. Rex looked around frantically. There was no one here, no humans to call for help, to save this fragile life that was slipping away with each passing second. The streets were empty, the buildings dark. The hospital was miles away, on the other side of town. How could he get help? How could he save this tiny human who had been thrown away like garbage? He made a decision then, one that went against everything he knew about being gentle with fragile things. Carefully, with a tenderness that belied his size and strength, Rex took the edge of the blanket between his teeth and pulled the bundle closer. He had to move the baby, had to find help before it was too late. The infant whimpered as Rex adjusted his grip, finding a secure hold on the blanket that wouldn't hurt the precious cargo inside. With one final glance around the empty alley, Rex began to run, the bundle held firmly but gently in his jaws. Each step was measured, each turn calculated to avoid jostling the baby. Rex knew exactly where he needed to go, the hospital with its bright lights and distinctive smell of antiseptic that he'd visited once when Frank had fallen and broken his hip. It was far, but Rex ran with a purpose that transcended exhaustion. The baby's cries grew fainter as Rex navigated the dark streets. He took shortcuts through yards and parks, avoiding rough terrain that might hurt the infant. His mind was focused on one thing only: save the baby. Nothing else mattered. Not the cold biting at his paws, not the exhaustion creeping into his muscles, not even the stray dogs that barked warnings as he passed through their territory. The hospital was getting closer. Rex could see the glow of lights in the distance, a beacon of hope in the dark night. The baby had gone quiet again. Too quiet. Rex picked up his pace, ignoring the burning in his lungs. And then disaster struck. As he approached the main road that led to the hospital, bright headlights suddenly flooded the street. A car was speeding around the corner, tires screeching as it took the turn too fast. Rex froze for a split second, the bundle still held carefully in his jaws. The car was coming straight for them, and there was nowhere to go. Time seemed to slow down. Rex could see the driver's shocked face as the headlights illuminated him and his precious cargo. He heard the screech of brakes, smelled burning rubber, felt the rush of air as the car swerved. For one terrible moment, Rex thought they were both going to die there on the cold pavement. The car slid to a halt just inches from where Rex stood, engine still running, headlights blinding. Rex didn't move, couldn't move, afraid that any sudden action might hurt the baby. The driver's door flew open, and a woman jumped out, her face a mask of shock and confusion. "Oh my God!" she gasped, one hand over her mouth. "I almost hit you! What are you—" Her words died in her throat as she saw what Rex was carrying. The bundle in his mouth moved slightly, and a weak cry drifted through the night air. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief. Is that a baby?" she whispered, slowly approaching the German shepherd who stood rigid with tension. Rex didn't growl or back away. Instead, he took a careful step toward her, his eyes never leaving her face. The woman, Olivia, according to the ID badge clipped to her scrubs, knelt down, her hands shaking as she reached for the bundle. "Let me see," she said softly, her voice gentle but urgent. "Please, I need to see." Rex hesitated for just a moment before allowing her to take the blanket from his jaws. He watched intently as she unwrapped it, revealing the tiny infant inside. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. "Oh my God, where did you come from?" she whispered, her nursing training kicking in as she quickly assessed the baby's condition. The infant's skin was cold to the touch, its breathing shallow and labored. "This baby is hypothermic," she muttered, quickly wrapping it back up and holding it close to her body for warmth. Rex whimpered anxiously, pawing at her leg. He needed her to understand the urgency, to know that this tiny life was slipping away with each passing second. Olivia looked from the dog to the baby, her mind racing. This wasn't a coincidence. This German shepherd hadn't just found an abandoned baby, he was actively trying to save it. "The hospital is just around the corner," she said, almost to herself as she stood up with the baby cradled against her chest. "I was just heading to my shift, but this changes everything." She hesitated, her eyes scanning the dark street. This baby didn't just appear out of nowhere. Someone had left it there, abandoned it in the trash like unwanted refuse. Someone had wrapped it in a blanket, pinned a note asking for help, and then walked away. Why? What kind of person would do such a thing? And more importantly, were they watching right now? Olivia made a split-second decision. She hurried back to her car, opened the passenger door, and carefully placed the bundle on the seat. "Come on," she said to Rex, who was still watching her every move with intense focus. "You found this baby. You're coming too." Rex didn't need to be told twice. He jumped into the back seat, his eyes never leaving the bundle on the passenger seat. Olivia slid behind the wheel and pulled away from the curb, driving the short distance to the hospital with a sense of urgency that made her hands shake on the steering wheel. As they pulled into the emergency entrance, Olivia's mind was racing. This wasn't just an abandoned baby. There was more to this story. The note, the careful wrapping despite the trash location, the surgical-looking mark she'd noticed on the infant's arm. Something wasn't right, and a part of her wondered if, by helping this child, she was stepping into something dangerous. But there was no time for those thoughts now. The baby needed immediate medical attention. As Olivia parked and grabbed the bundle from the passenger seat, Rex jumped out after her, determined not to let the baby out of his sight. Together, they rushed toward the bright lights of the emergency room, unaware that their lives had just changed forever, and that the real danger was only beginning. Rex stood at the entrance of the hospital, his heart pounding in his chest. He had done all he could to bring the baby here, but now he faced a new problem. Dogs weren't allowed inside, yet every instinct told him he couldn't leave the infant alone. He paced anxiously at the glass doors, watching as Olivia rushed inside with the bundle clutched tightly to her chest. Inside, the fluorescent lights of the emergency room were blinding after the darkness of the night. Olivia burst through the doors, startling the nurse behind the reception desk. "I need help now," Olivia shouted, her voice echoing through the quiet waiting room. "I found an abandoned baby. It's hypothermic and barely breathing." The reaction was immediate. A team of medical staff materialized around her, their faces shifting from tired indifference to focused urgency. Dr. Patel, the attending physician on duty, gently took the bundle from Olivia's arms. "How long has the infant been exposed?" he asked, already unwrapping the dirty blanket to assess the baby. "I don't know," Olivia admitted, her voice shaking. "A dog found it, a German shepherd. He was carrying it in his mouth, trying to bring it here. I almost hit them with my car." Dr. Patel glanced up, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face before his training took over. "Temperature's 94.1, severe hypothermia. Get a warming blanket and start a peripheral IV. We need to warm this baby slowly." As the team worked, Olivia stood frozen, watching the tiny life hanging in the balance. The baby, a girl they'd discovered, had blue-tinged skin and was barely responsive. Her tiny chest rose and fell in shallow, irregular patterns. Outside, Rex refused to leave. He sat stubbornly by the door, his eyes fixed on the scene unfolding inside. A security guard approached, ready to shoo him away, but something in the dog's demeanor made him hesitate. This wasn't an ordinary stray. The German shepherd sat with a purpose, alert and watchful, as if he understood exactly what was happening. Inside, as the medical team stabilized the baby, Olivia found herself torn. She should call the police. That was protocol for abandoned children. But something about this situation felt different. The baby hadn't just been abandoned. Someone had tried to hide her in the trash. And that note, with just the word help visible, what did it mean? Who was this child? And why was she discarded like garbage? She approached Dr. Patel, who was now inserting an IV into the baby's tiny arm. "There's something else," she said quietly. "When I found her, there was a note pinned to the blanket. Most of it was soaked through, but one word was clear: help." Dr. Patel's hand stilled for just a moment. "That suggests someone wanted the baby to be found, not just discarded," he said thoughtfully. "Have you called the police?" Olivia hesitated. "Not yet. I wanted to make sure she was stable first." "Do it now," he instructed, "and mention the note. This could be more complicated than a simple abandonment case." As Olivia reached for her phone, a nurse gasped, "Doctor, look at this." They all turned to see what she was pointing at, a small, precise mark on the baby's upper arm. It wasn't a bruise or a birthmark, but something that looked almost surgical in nature, a tiny line no more than an inch long that appeared to be a recently healed incision. "What is that?" Olivia asked, leaning closer. Dr. Patel frowned. "It looks like a surgical scar, but I've never seen anything like this on a newborn. Run a full panel of tests, blood work, imaging, everything. Something isn't right here." Outside, Rex's ears perked up at the sound of approaching sirens. Police. His instincts told him to run. Most animals knew to avoid the loud vehicles and uniformed humans, but he couldn't leave, not yet. Not until he knew the baby was safe. He hadn't risked everything just to abandon her now. Officer James Daniels arrived first, a tall man with kind eyes that belied his stern expression. He approached the reception desk, notebook already in hand. "I'm responding to a call about an abandoned infant." The nurse pointed toward the trauma bay. "Dr. Patel and his team are with the baby now. The woman who brought her in, Olivia Chen, is still here too." Officer Daniels nodded and made his way to the treatment area. As he passed the entrance, he noticed the German shepherd sitting attentively by the door. Unlike most strays, this one wasn't cowering or aggressive. It watched him with intelligent eyes that seemed almost human in their awareness. Inside, Olivia was explaining everything to Dr. Patel when Officer Daniels arrived. "The dog was carrying her," she was saying. "I've never seen anything like it. He was so careful, like he knew exactly how fragile she was." "Excuse me?" Officer Daniels interrupted, showing his badge. "I'm Officer Daniels. I understand you found an abandoned baby." Olivia turned, suddenly nervous. Why was she nervous? She had done nothing wrong. She had saved a life. Yet something about this situation made her feel like she was stepping into dangerous territory. "Yes," she said, gathering her composure. "I was driving to work. I'm a nurse here, when I almost hit a dog carrying something in its mouth. When I stopped, I realized it was a baby wrapped in a dirty blanket. The dog was trying to bring it to the hospital." Officer Daniels wrote quickly in his notebook. "And where exactly did this happen?" "About 2 blocks from here, near the intersection of Maple and 5th. "And the dog? Where is it now?" Olivia pointed toward the entrance. "He followed us here. He's still sitting outside. He won't leave." Officer Daniels raised an eyebrow. "The dog brought the baby to the hospital?" "Well, he was trying to," Olivia explained, aware of how implausible it sounded. "I just happened to intercept them on the way." The officer looked skeptical, but continued his questions. "Was there anything else with the baby? Any identification, note, anything that might help us locate the parents?" Olivia hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out the sodden piece of paper she had removed from the blanket. This was pinned to the blanket. Most of it's ruined from the rain, but you can still see one word: help. Officer Daniels took the paper carefully, examining it. "This changes things," he said quietly. "This wasn't just an abandonment. Someone was asking for help." As they spoke, Dr. Patel approached, his face grave. "The baby is stable for now," he reported, "but I'm concerned about several things. She's approximately 3 days old, severely malnourished, and has what appears to be a surgical incision on her upper arm. It's recent, within the last day or two." Officer Daniels frowned. "Surgical? What kind of surgery would a newborn need that would leave a mark like that?" "That's just it, Doctor," Patel said, lowering his voice. "I've consulted with our pediatric surgeon. It doesn't match any standard medical procedure we perform on infants. It's almost like someone took a sample of some kind." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. "A sample? You mean like tissue or blood?" Dr. Patel nodded grimly. "Possibly. We won't know more until we get the test results back. But I've never seen anything like this in 20 years of medicine." Officer Daniels' expression darkened. "I need to call this in. This isn't a routine child abandonment case anymore." As he stepped away to make the call, Olivia moved closer to the baby, who was now wrapped in warming blankets, tiny tubes and wires connecting her to machines that beeped steadily. Who would do this to an innocent child, and why? Outside, Rex had not moved from his position. His ears twitched at every sound, his body tense and ready. He sensed something the humans inside couldn't. Danger was coming. He could feel it in the air, smell it on the wind. The baby wasn't safe, not yet. Inside, Officer Daniels returned, his face troubled. "That's strange," he said to Olivia. "Dispatch says someone already called in about an abandoned baby almost 30 minutes before you arrived at the hospital." Olivia stared at him. "That's impossible. I just found her. Who would have known?" "Exactly," Officer Daniels said grimly. "Someone knew this baby would be found and brought here tonight. The question is, who and how?" A chill settled over the room as the implications sank in. This wasn't a random abandonment. Someone had planned this, planned for the baby to be found, to be brought to this specific hospital. But why leave her in the trash? Why not bring her directly to safety? Unless safety wasn't the goal. As if confirming their fears, the hospital doors suddenly slid open. Rex tensed, a low growl building in his throat as a woman rushed in. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with wild eyes and disheveled hair. She looked around frantically, her gaze settling on the reception desk. "Please," she gasped, her voice breaking. "I'm looking for a baby, a newborn. She would have been brought in tonight." The receptionist glanced toward Officer Daniels, who had stepped into view at the sound of the commotion. The woman followed her gaze, and her eyes widened at the sight of the police officer. "Are you the mother?" Officer Daniels asked carefully, approaching her with measured steps. The woman shook her head violently. No, I'm not. But I know her mother. Please, is the baby here? Is she alive?" Olivia had moved to the doorway of the trauma bay, drawn by the commotion. At the sight of the distressed woman, something inside her tensed. Was this a trap? Was this woman here to take the baby, to finish whatever had been started? Rex seemed to share her concerns. He had somehow slipped past the security guard and now stood just inside the hospital doors, his body rigid, eyes fixed on the newcomer. A low growl rumbled in his chest, too quiet for the humans to hear, but a clear warning to anyone who might threaten the baby he had saved. Officer Daniels gestured for the woman to sit down. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down and explain exactly who you are and how you know about this child." The woman sank into a chair, her hands shaking. "My name is Sophia. The baby's mother is my best friend Emily. She's been hiding for weeks, terrified that he would find her." "Who is he?" Officer Daniels asked, his pen poised over his notebook. Sophia looked up, her eyes filled with fear. "The man who said if he couldn't have the baby, no one would." A collective chill seemed to spread through the room. Dr. Patel had emerged from the trauma bay, listening intently. Olivia felt her heart pounding in her chest. Across the room, Rex had inched closer, his ears forward, absorbing every word. "Where is Emily now?" Officer Daniels asked. Sophia's face crumpled. "I don't know. She called me tonight, hysterical, saying she had to hide the baby, that they were coming for her. She said, ... Sophia's voice broke. She said if anything happened to her, I should make sure her daughter was safe. As the words left her mouth, the hospital doors slid open again. Rex's growl intensified, the sound now audible to everyone in the waiting room. A tall man in an expensive suit walked in, his face a mask of professional concern. He approached the desk with confidence, pulling out a wallet from his inner pocket. "I'm Special Agent Thomas Walker," he announced, flashing what appeared to be government credentials. "I'm here about the abandoned infant." Officer Daniels straightened, immediately suspicious. How did a federal agent know about the baby so quickly? And why would this case warrant federal attention? He studied the man's ID closely. "What agency did you say you were with?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Special Investigations Unit," the man replied smoothly. "This child is part of an ongoing investigation. I'll need to take custody immediately." Sophia had gone pale, her eyes wide with terror as she stared at the newcomer. Olivia noticed her reaction and felt her own suspicions deepen. Across the room, Rex had positioned himself between the trauma bay and the stranger, his teeth now visible in a silent snarl. Officer Daniels didn't miss the dog's reaction, nor Sophia's. Something was very wrong here. "I'll need to verify your credentials," he said, pulling out his phone. "Standard procedure." The man's smile never wavered, but something cold flashed in his eyes. "Of course, but I must insist on seeing the child immediately. This is a matter of national security." As Officer Daniels stepped away to make the call, the tension in the room grew palpable. The baby girl, oblivious to the drama unfolding around her, slept peacefully under the warming lights, her tiny chest rising and falling with each hard-won breath. Whatever secret she held, whatever danger followed her, she had one unexpected protector who refused to leave her side. Rex's eyes never left the man in the suit, his instinct screaming that this human meant harm to the baby he had saved. And for the first time in his life, the German Shepherd prepared himself to fight a battle he didn't fully understand, but one he refused to lose. Officer Daniels stepped away, phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in hushed tones to his precinct. Something about the so-called agent didn't sit right with him. The credentials looked legitimate at first glance, but there was a protocol for federal involvement in local cases, and this wasn't it. No federal agent should have known about the baby this quickly. Meanwhile, Dr. Patel had positioned himself protectively near the trauma bay where the infant rested. He exchanged a concerned glance with Olivia, who had instinctively moved closer to the baby. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. "How did you know about this child so quickly?" Dr. Patel asked the man in the suit, his voice professional but laced with suspicion. "As I said, this is part of an ongoing investigation. the man replied smoothly. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the room, lingering momentarily on Sophia, who seemed to shrink under his gaze. I'm not at liberty to discuss details. Officer Daniels returned, his expression carefully neutral. I've just spoken with my sergeant. He's reaching out to verify your credentials with the federal database. Standard procedure. It shouldn't take long. A flicker of annoyance crossed the man's face before his professional mask slipped back into place. Of course, but I must insist on seeing the child now. Time is of the essence. I'm afraid that's not possible at the moment, Dr. Patel interjected. The infant is in critical condition and needs immediate medical attention without interruption. The man's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Doctor, I understand your concern, but this is a matter of national security. I have the authority to remove the child from your care. From her seat, Sophia made a small, strangled sound. Her eyes were wide with terror, fixed on the man's back. Olivia noticed and moved closer to her, speaking quietly. Do you know him? She whispered. Sophia shook her head frantically. No, but Emily warned me. She said they might send someone official-looking, someone with credentials and authority. Her voice broke. Someone who could take the baby legally, and no one would stop them. Olivia's blood ran cold. She looked back at the man, who was now engaged in a tense conversation with Officer Daniels and Dr. Patel. There was something predatory about him, something that set off alarm bells in her mind. Across the room, Rex had inched closer, his body low to the ground, moving almost imperceptibly toward the confrontation. No one paid any attention to the dog. All eyes were on the standoff between the officer, the doctor, and the supposed federal agent. Let me be clear, the man was saying, his voice harder now. This child is connected to a classified investigation involving national security. I have the legal authority to take custody immediately. Officer Daniels stood his ground. And I have the legal obligation to verify your identity before releasing a minor into your custody, especially one who appears to have been abandoned under suspicious circumstances. The man's hand moved slightly toward his jacket, a gesture so subtle that only Rex noticed it. The German shepherd tensed, a low growl building in his chest. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels had pulled out the soggy note found with the baby. Can you explain this? He asked, holding it up. If this child is part of your investigation, why was she abandoned with a note begging for help? The man's eyes narrowed as he looked at the paper. For a split second, genuine surprise flickered across his face before he controlled his expression. That's part of the classified information I mentioned. Now, I'm losing patience, officer. I need to see that child. He took a step toward the trauma bay, and several things happened at once. Rex's growl became a full-throated bark, Doctor. Patel moved to block the doorway, and Officer Daniels put a hand on the man's chest to stop his advance. Sir, I'm going to need you to step back, Officer Daniels said firmly. No one sees this child until your credentials are verified. The man's composed demeanor finally cracked. You have no idea what you're interfering with, he hissed, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. That child is not what you think. She's property, not a person. A shocked silence fell over the room. Property? The slip seemed to surprise even the man himself, who quickly attempted to recover. I mean, she's evidence in a critical case. You're obstructing justice, officer. But the damage was done. Officer Daniels' hand moved subtly toward his weapon, his instincts now fully aligned with his suspicions. Sir, I'm going to need you to take a seat while we sort this out. The man's eyes darted around the room, calculating. Sophia was visibly trembling now. Olivia had her phone out, possibly recording, and the doctor stood firm in the doorway to the trauma bay. Worst of all, the German shepherd had positioned himself between the man and the baby, teeth bared in a silent threat. With deliberate slowness, the man reached into his jacket. I have additional documentation that should clear this up, he said, his voice once again smooth and professional. Officer Daniels tensed. Keep your hands where I can see them, sir. The next few seconds unfolded in slow motion. The man's hand emerged not with papers, but with a syringe, its needle glinting under the harsh hospital lights. Before anyone could react, Rex launched himself forward, a blur of black fur and white teeth. His powerful jaws clamped around the man's wrist, just as the syringe came into full view. The man screamed in pain and surprise, dropping the syringe, which clattered to the floor. Officer Daniels drew his weapon in an instant, shouting commands as he pulled his radio with his free hand to call for backup. "Get down! On the ground now!" he ordered, his gun trained on the man who was now wrestling with the German Shepherd. Rex held on tenaciously, growling deep in his throat as he forced the man to the ground. Years of instinct told him to protect, to hold the threat until the pack leader, in this case, Officer Daniels, could take over. Hospital security rushed in, alerted by the commotion. Together with Officer Daniels, they subdued the man, who continued to struggle and shout about his authority and the consequences they would all face. Dr. Patel had rushed to secure the fallen syringe, carefully picking it up with gloved hands. "I need this analyzed immediately," he instructed a nearby nurse, "and lock down the pediatric ward. No one in or out without my direct authorization." Olivia had pulled Sophia aside, shielding her from the chaos. "Emily was right," Sophia whispered, her face ashen. "They really did come for the baby." As the security guards handcuffed the man, and Officer Daniels read him his rights, Rex finally released his grip on the man's wrist. The German Shepherd backed away, blood on his muzzle, but his eyes remained fixed on the threat. He would not stand down, not completely, until he was certain the danger had passed. Officer Daniels knelt to examine what had fallen from the man's pocket during the struggle. A wallet, different from the one that had held his supposed credentials. Inside was an ID card with a logo he didn't recognize, some kind of private organization, and more damning, a DNA test result paper. He scanned it quickly, his blood running cold at what he found. "He's not the father," Officer Daniels announced, looking up at the room. "This is a paternity test showing negative results." Sophia gasped. "That's him then. Emily said he was obsessed with having a child, his child. When he found out the baby wasn't his..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Get him out of here," Officer Daniels instructed the security guards. "Keep him isolated until my backup arrives." He turned to Dr. Patel. "That syringe, what was in it?" Dr. Patel's face was grim. "We won't know until the lab analyzes it, but given the circumstances, I doubt it was anything beneficial to the child." As the man was dragged away, still shouting threats and promises of retribution, the atmosphere in the waiting room shifted. The immediate danger had passed, but the implications of what had just happened were sinking in. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Rex padded back to the trauma bay, his mission not yet complete in his mind. He needed to see the baby, to know she was safe. Surprisingly, no one stopped him as he made his way to where the infant lay, surrounded by medical equipment. He sat beside the incubator, his intelligent eyes watching the tiny chest rise and fall with each breath. Officer Daniels approached Sophia, who was now openly crying. "I need you to tell me everything you know," he said gently but firmly. "Who is Emily? Who was that man? And why is this baby so important to him?" Sophia wiped her tears with shaking hands. "Emily and I have been friends since college. She met him, Robert Keller, at a research symposium last year. He's some kind of genetic scientist with a private company. They started dating and things moved fast." "Too fast?" She took a deep breath before continuing. "Emily got pregnant, and at first, Robert seemed happy. He's obsessed with having a child, specifically his own biological child. But then Emily overheard him on the phone one night, talking about genetic testing and optimal specimens. It scared her." Officer Daniels frowned. "Genetic testing? On the baby?" Sophia nodded. "Emily is a microbiologist. She understood enough of what he was saying to be terrified. She started digging into his research, his company. What she found made her run." She looked up, her eyes haunted. "He wasn't interested in being a father. He was interested in the baby's DNA. Dr. Patel had joined them, his expression grave. That would explain the surgical mark on the infant's arm. Someone took a tissue sample." He hesitated. "But why abandon the baby in the trash? Why not bring her directly to safety?" "Emily said they were watching her," Sophia explained. "She couldn't go to the police, couldn't go to a hospital. They would find her. So she..." Her voice broke. "She did the only thing she could think of. She left her baby where someone would find her, but not somewhere obvious that they would be watching." Olivia remembered the note. The note said, "Help." She wanted someone to help her baby. "But how did the dog find her?" Officer Daniels wondered aloud, looking at Rex, who remained vigilant by the incubator. No one had an answer for that. Some things defied explanation. A nurse rushed in, her face pale. Dr. Patel, the lab just called about the syringe. It contained a lethal dose of potassium chloride. A horrified silence fell over the group. The man hadn't come to take the baby. He had come to kill her. That would have stopped her heart instantly, Dr. Patel said, his voice barely above a whisper. And it would have looked like natural causes. A fragile, abandoned newborn, suffering from hypothermia and malnutrition, who simply couldn't hang on. Officer Daniels' face hardened. This just went from child endangerment to attempted murder. He turned to a newly arrived officer. I want a full background check on Robert Keller. Get a warrant for his home, his office, everything. And I want protection on this child around the clock. As the police began setting up a security detail, Olivia found herself drawn to the trauma bay where Rex sat vigilant. She knelt beside the German shepherd, who acknowledged her with a brief glance before returning his attention to the baby. You knew, didn't you? She whispered, running her hand gently over his fur. Somehow, you knew she needed you. Rex made no response, but his steady presence was answer enough. Some connections transcended understanding. The bond between this dog and the baby he had saved was one of them. In the incubator, the baby girl stirred, her tiny fists clenching and unclenching as she fought her way back to health. She had no name yet, no identity beyond Baby Jane Doe on her hospital chart. But she had something many children never knew. A protector who had found her against all odds, who had carried her through the night, who had stood between her and harm without hesitation. As the hospital locked down and police established a protective perimeter, no one noticed the shadow that passed briefly across the window of the third floor, a figure watching the commotion below with cold, calculating eyes. Robert Keller had failed, but he wasn't working alone, and what they wanted from Baby Jane Doe was worth killing for. The baby slept on, oblivious to the forces gathering around her, forces that would stop at nothing to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. The secret hidden in her DNA. As dawn broke over the hospital, casting long shadows through the windows, the atmosphere had transformed from the chaotic emergency of the night before to a tense state of watchful waiting. 2 police officers were stationed outside the pediatric unit where Baby Jane Doe had been transferred. Inside, Dr. Patel had assigned his most trusted nurses to rotate shifts, ensuring the infant was never alone. Olivia had stayed long past the end of her shift, unable to tear herself away from the strange case that had literally crashed into her life. She sat in a chair beside the baby's incubator, exhaustion etched into her face. Rex lay at her feet, his body relaxed but his eyes alert, tracking every person who entered the room. The German shepherd had become an unofficial security measure. Hospital administration had tried to remove him at first, citing hygiene protocols, but his behavior during the confrontation with Robert Keller had earned him a temporary exemption. Besides, no one was quite willing to forcibly separate him from the baby he had saved. Sophia had been moved to a private waiting area under police protection. Her statement had been taken, recorded, and sent to the precinct for processing. Now she sat with her hands wrapped around a cooling cup of hospital coffee, her eyes red-rimmed from crying and lack of sleep. Officer Daniels entered the room, his face showing the strain of the long night. "We've got a problem," he said without preamble. "Robert Keller doesn't exist." Olivia looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Sophia knows him. "She knows a man who called himself Robert Keller," Officer Daniels clarified. "But the ID we found on him is fake. High quality, but fake. The company listed on his credentials doesn't exist either, at least not officially. We're dealing with something bigger than a stalker ex-boyfriend." Sophia shook her head in disbelief. "But Emily met him at a research symposium. He had presentations, papers published. How could all of that be fake?" Officer Daniels sat down heavily in an empty chair. "We don't know yet, but the man we have in custody isn't talking. He's got a lawyer now, appeared within an hour of his arrest. Expensive suit, private firm." "What about the syringe?" Dr. Patel asked, joining the conversation as he entered to check on the baby. "That's attempted murder. He can't just walk away from that." "The lawyer is claiming it was a sedative, not potassium chloride. Says his client was trying to safely transport the child for urgent medical treatment related to her condition." Officer Daniels' tone made it clear what he thought of this explanation. "They're demanding the hospital run independent tests on the contents. But our lab already confirmed it," Dr. Patel protested. and their lawyer is arguing chain of custody issues, contamination risks, throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. Officer Daniels ran a hand over his face. This guy has resources, serious resources. Olivia looked down at the sleeping infant. What about Emily? Have you found her? No trace yet, Officer Daniels admitted. We've got an APB out, but if she's as scared as Sophia says, she might be hiding too well for us to find. Rex suddenly lifted his head, ears perked forward, staring intently at the door, seconds before it opened. A tall woman in a crisp pantsuit entered, her badge already extended. Agent Sarah Lawson, FBI, she introduced herself. I understand you have a situation involving an abandoned infant and a man impersonating a federal agent. Officer Daniels straightened immediately. Yes, ma'am, though we're still working to confirm his actual identity. Agent Lawson nodded briskly. I can help with that. The man you have in custody is Dr. Marcus Webb, former research director at Gene Tech Innovations, a private biotech firm specializing in genetic research. He was fired 3 years ago for ethical violations. Ethical violations? Dr. Patel repeated. What kind? Unauthorized human testing, Agent Lawson said grimly. The official report was sanitized for public consumption, something about procedural breaches, but our investigation suggested he was collecting and testing genetic material without consent. Sophia gasped. That's what Emily found out. I'm sure of it. She said he was obsessed with genetics, with creating the perfect child. Agent Lawson turned her sharp gaze to Sophia. You must be the friend. We need to talk about Emily Winters. The use of Emily's full name sent a visible jolt through Sophia. You know about Emily? We've been investigating Dr. Webb and his associates for months, Agent Lawson explained. Emily Winters came onto our radar when she accessed certain restricted databases using Dr. Webb's credentials. At first, we thought she might be working with him, but her subsequent behavior suggested otherwise. She was gathering evidence, Sophia said quietly. She told me she needed proof of what he was doing. Agent Lawson nodded. That fits our profile. But then she disappeared, along with critical research files from Webb's private server. We've been looking for her, and apparently, so has Webb. Officer Daniels frowned. I don't understand. What could be so important about this research that someone would try to kill an infant to protect it? Agent Lawson looked at the baby, her expression unreadable. That's classified at the highest levels. What I can tell you is that Dr. Webb was working on genetic modifications that would fundamentally alter human development. Enhancements, if you will. Dr. Patel's eyes widened. You mean designer babies? That's been theoretically possible for years, but the ethical barriers were not a concern for Dr. Webb. Agent Lawson finished for him. We believe Emily Winters discovered that she was part of his experiment without her knowledge, and her baby. She nodded toward the sleeping infant. Maybe the first successful subject. A stunned silence fell over the room. Rex, sensing the shift in atmosphere, moved closer to the incubator, placing his body between the baby and the newcomer. You think he modified her genetics? Olivia whispered, looking at the tiny infant with new eyes. But she looks normal. The modifications wouldn't necessarily be visible, Agent Lawson explained. They could affect intelligence, strength, disease resistance, longevity, traits that would only become apparent over time. Dr. Patel shook his head. That's why the surgical mark. They were taking samples, testing to see if the modifications took hold. Precisely, Agent Lawson confirmed. And if Webb was willing to kill the child rather than let her fall into other hands, the experiment must have been successful. Sophia had gone pale. Emily never said. She just kept saying they wanted the baby, that they claimed the baby belonged to them. In their minds, the child is intellectual property, Agent Lawson said, her voice hard with disgust. A product, not a person. Officer Daniels narrowed his eyes, studying the agent carefully. If this is so classified, why are you telling us all this now? Agent Lawson met his gaze directly. Because the situation has escalated. We have reason to believe Webb isn't working alone. His former company, Gene Tech, officially disavowed his research, but they've been suspiciously interested in finding Emily Winters. They've hired private investigators, offering substantial rewards for information. You think they want the research, Dr. Patel concluded. Or the baby, Agent Lawson corrected. The living proof that it works. As if on cue, the baby stirred, her tiny fists waving in the air as she let out a soft cry. Olivia immediately moved to check on her, and Rex stood, his attention completely focused on the infant. "What happens now?" Olivia asked, gently adjusting the baby's blanket. "If what you're saying is true, she'll never be safe." "That's why I'm here," Agent Lawson said. "We need to move her to a secure facility where we can protect her and run our own tests to determine exactly what Webb did." Dr. Patel frowned. "She's still medically fragile. Moving her could be risky." "Keeping her here is riskier," Agent Lawson countered. "Webb has been arrested, but his associates are still out there. This hospital can't provide the kind of security she needs." Officer Daniels seemed unconvinced. "I'd like to verify your credentials first, Agent Lawson. No offense, but after what happened with Webb—" "None taken," she replied smoothly, handing over her ID and badge. "Make whatever calls you need to make, but don't take too long. The longer we stay in one place, the more vulnerable we are." While Officer Daniels stepped away to verify Agent Lawson's identity, Rex had moved directly to the baby's side, his nose gently touching her tiny hand. The infant reflexively grasped at his fur, holding on with surprising strength for one so small. "It's remarkable, Doctor," Patel said, watching the interaction. "The bond between them, as if they were meant to find each other." Olivia stroked Rex's head thoughtfully. "Maybe they were. How else do you explain a dog finding an abandoned baby in a pile of trash on a cold night and knowing exactly what to do?" Agent Lawson observed the scene with a faint frown. "The dog stays here when we move the child. We can't accommodate an animal in a secure facility." Rex's head turned sharply at her words, his amber eyes fixing on the agent with an intensity that made her step back instinctively. "I don't think he agrees with that plan," Olivia said quietly. Before Agent Lawson could respond, Officer Daniels returned, his expression grim. "Your credentials check out, Agent Lawson. But I've just received a concerning update. The man we arrested, Dr. Webb, has been released on bail." "That's impossible," Agent Lawson snapped. "With the charges against him?" His lawyer argued that the evidence was circumstantial, and the syringe contents were still in dispute. The judge set bail at $2 million, which was paid immediately in cash. Officer Daniels' frustration was palpable. "He's been ordered to surrender his passport and wear an ankle monitor, but he's out there," Sophia whispered, fear evident in her voice. "And he knows where the baby is." Agent Lawson's demeanor changed instantly. "We need to move now. I'll call for backup and secure transport." As she pulled out her phone, Rex suddenly tensed, a low growl building in his throat. Everyone froze, looking at the German Shepherd who was now facing the door, his hackles raised. "What is it, boy?" Olivia asked softly, following his gaze. The door remained closed, but through the small window, a shadow passed, too quickly to identify, but definitely there. Officer Daniels drew his weapon and moved to the door in one smooth motion. "Stay with the baby," he instructed, before slipping out into the corridor. 10 seconds passed. Agent Lawson had positioned herself between the door and the incubator, her hand inside her jacket where her weapon was presumably holstered. Dr. Patel stood frozen, eyes fixed on the door. Sophia had pressed herself into the corner, as if trying to disappear. The door opened suddenly, causing everyone to jump. Officer Daniels returned, holstering his weapon. "Security reports a man in scrubs on this floor who doesn't match any staff IDs. They're searching the building now." "We don't have time for a search," Agent Lawson decided. "We need to move the baby immediately. Dr. Patel, what do you need to prepare her for transport?" The doctor hesitated only briefly before his medical training took over. "I'll need a portable incubator, monitoring equipment, emergency medications. Give me 15 minutes. "You have 10, Agent Lawson replied, already dialing on her phone. "I'm calling in a medical transport team and additional agents. Officer Daniels, I need your people to secure a route from this room to the parking garage." As everyone sprang into action, Olivia found herself alone with Rex and the baby. The German Shepherd had calmed somewhat, but remained vigilant, his body positioned protectively beside the incubator. Olivia knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his back. "I don't think she's going to let me take you," she said softly. "But I won't let them separate you two. Not after everything you've done." Rex turned his intelligent eyes to her, and for a moment, Olivia felt as if he understood every word. He nudged her hand with his nose before returning his attention to the baby, who was now awake and looking around with unfocused eyes. In that moment, watching the connection between this abandoned infant and the dog who had saved her, Olivia made a decision. Whatever happened next, wherever this child went, Rex would go too. She would make sure of it. The next 10 minutes were a blur of activity. Dr. Patel and his team prepared the baby for transport, carefully transferring her to a portable incubator equipped with monitoring devices that beeped steadily, tracking her vital signs. Agent Lawson coordinated with her team over the phone, her voice low and urgent as she arranged for a secure perimeter and transport vehicle. Officer Daniels had positioned additional officers throughout the hospital corridors, creating a secure route from the pediatric ward to the parking garage. The hospital had been partially locked down, with all non-essential personnel directed away from their path. As Dr. Patel made final checks on the baby's condition, Agent Lawson approached Olivia. "We're moving out in 2 minutes. Once we leave this room, you and the dog stay behind. This is a federal operation now." Olivia stood her ground. "Rex comes with her." Agent Lawson's expression hardened. "This isn't a negotiation. We can't—" "He found her," Olivia interrupted. "He protected her. He sensed Webb before any of your people did. If you want what's best for this baby, Rex stays with her." "I don't have time for this," Agent Lawson said dismissively, turning away. "Then make time," Olivia insisted, stepping into the agent's path. "Because if Rex stays, I stay, and I'm pretty sure he won't let you take that baby without a fight." As if to emphasize her point, Rex moved to stand beside the portable incubator, his posture making it clear that he had no intention of being separated from his charge. Agent Lawson glanced at the German Shepherd, then at her watch. "Fine. The dog can come in the transport vehicle, but at the secure facility, he stays outside. That's non-negotiable." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Olivia nodded her agreement, then knelt beside Rex. "You're coming with us, boy. Stay close to the baby, okay?" Rex seemed to understand, his intelligent eyes fixed on the incubator where the infant lay. Dr. Patel gave a final nod, indicating they were ready to move. With practiced efficiency, the medical team unlocked the wheels of the incubator and began to guide it toward the door. Officer Daniels went first, weapon drawn but held low at his side. Agent Lawson flanked the incubator on the left, while Dr. Patel stayed on the right, monitoring the baby's vitals as they moved. Olivia and Rex followed directly behind, with Sophia and 2 additional officers bringing up the rear. The hallway was eerily empty, the normal bustle of hospital activity suspended during their passage. Their footsteps echoed on the polished floor, the steady beeping of the baby's monitors creating a rhythmic counterpoint. They moved swiftly but carefully, the incubator gliding smoothly despite its bulk. They had almost reached the elevators when the lights went out. For a split second, darkness enveloped them completely. Then emergency lights flickered on, bathing the corridor in a dim, reddish glow. The baby's monitors continued to beep, now running on backup power, but the elevator panel had gone dark. "Stairs," Agent Lawson ordered immediately. "Now!" Officer Daniels moved quickly to the stairwell door, checking it before holding it open for the group. The incubator was too bulky for the stairs, so Dr. Patel quickly transferred the baby to a special transport sling across his chest, still connected to portable monitoring equipment. "Move!" Agent Lawson urged as the sound of running footsteps echoed from down the hallway. They filed into the stairwell, Officer Daniels taking the lead, followed by Dr. Patel with the baby. Agent Lawson paused at the door, gun drawn, covering their retreat. Olivia, Rex, and Sophia hurried down the stairs, the 2 additional officers bringing up the rear. They had descended just 1 floor when the stairwell door above them burst open. A man in scrubs, his face covered by a surgical mask, appeared at the landing. Before anyone could react, he raised his hand, revealing a small aerosol canister. Rex reacted first. With a powerful leap, he bounded back up the stairs, launching himself at the masked figure just as he began to spray the contents of the canister. The German Shepherd's weight slammed into the man, knocking him backward through the door and out of the stairwell. "Gas!" Agent Lawson shouted. "Everyone down to the garage now." They raced down the remaining flights of stairs, Doctor. Patel shielding the baby's face with a surgical mask he'd pulled from his pocket. The beeping of the monitors had accelerated, matching the tension of the moment. "What about Rex?" Olivia cried, looking back up the stairs. "No time!" Agent Lawson snapped. "Move!" Torn between following the baby and helping Rex, Olivia hesitated just long enough for Agent Lawson to grab her arm and pull her downward. The baby is the priority. They burst through the door into the parking garage, where two black SUVs with tinted windows waited, engines running. FBI agents in tactical gear secured the perimeter, weapons ready. "Get the baby in the first vehicle," Agent Lawson ordered, directing Dr. Patel toward the lead SUV. As they rushed across the concrete floor of the garage, a screeching of tires echoed through the space. A white van swerved around the corner, accelerating directly toward them. The FBI agents opened fire, aiming for the tires, but the van kept coming. "Take cover," Agent Lawson shouted, pushing Olivia and Sophia behind a concrete pillar. The van skidded to a stop between them and the waiting SUVs, its side door sliding open to reveal armed men in black tactical gear. They fired into the air, the shots reverberating deafeningly in the enclosed space. "Hand over the child!" one of the men shouted. "We don't want to hurt anyone!" Dr. Patel had ducked behind a parked car, still cradling the baby protectively. The infant had begun to cry, a thin wail barely audible over the chaos. The FBI agents had taken defensive positions, creating a standoff. "Federal agents," Agent Lawson called out, her weapon trained on the van. "Put down your weapons." Instead of complying, one of the men tossed something across the garage floor, a small cylindrical object that began spewing thick white smoke. In seconds, visibility dropped to almost nothing. Olivia could hear shouting, confused orders. The baby's cries growing more distressed. Through the smoke, shadows moved like ghosts, impossible to identify as friend or foe. She pressed herself against the pillar, Sophia trembling beside her, both of them helpless in the chaos. And then, cutting through the cacophony of sounds, came a familiar bark. Rex had found his way to the garage, undeterred by the gas or the armed men. His silhouette appeared in the smoke, moving with purpose, tracking something, or someone. A man's shout of pain cut through the haze, followed by the distinctive sound of a body hitting the concrete. Rex had found one of the attackers. The smoke was beginning to dissipate, pulled away by the garage's ventilation system. As visibility improved, Olivia caught glimpses of the scene. FBI agents engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the men from the van. Officer Daniels helping Dr. Patel stay covered behind the car, Agent Lawson methodically working her way closer to the baby. But one figure broke away from the fighting, moving stealthily toward Dr. Patel's position. Even through the thinning smoke, Olivia recognized him immediately. Dr. Marcus Webb, his expensive suit exchanged for tactical gear, his face twisted with determination. "The baby?" Olivia screamed in warning. "Webb is going for the baby." Rex heard her cry and changed direction, racing toward the threat. Webb spotted the approaching dog and pulled a small device from his belt, some kind of stun gun. As Rex leaped, Webb fired the weapon, sending electric barbs into the German Shepherd's chest. Rex yelped in pain, his body convulsing as electricity coursed through him. He collapsed to the ground, still twitching, but unbelievably he struggled to rise again, his loyalty overriding his pain. Webb reached Dr. Patel, who tried to shield the baby with his body. "Give her to me," Webb demanded. "She's my creation, my property." "She's a human being," Dr. Patel responded, defiant despite the fear in his eyes. Webb raised his hand, now holding a conventional pistol. "I won't ask again." A shot rang out, but it wasn't from Webb's gun. Agent Lawson had found a clear line of sight and fired, the bullet striking Webb's shoulder. He staggered backward, dropping his weapon, his face a mask of shock and rage. Before he could recover, Rex, somehow still functioning, despite the electric shock, dragged himself forward and clamped his jaws around Webb's ankle. The man screamed in pain and frustration as he was pulled off balance, falling hard to the concrete floor. FBI agents swarmed him immediately, securing his hands behind his back even as he continued to struggle and shout. "You don't understand. That child is the future of humanity. You can't keep her from me." As the remaining attackers were subdued and the situation brought under control, Olivia rushed to Rex's side. The German Shepherd lay panting on the ground, the stun gun barb still embedded in his fur. With gentle hands, she removed them, whispering words of comfort and praise. "You did it, Rex. You saved her. Again." Tears streamed down her face as she cradled his head. "You're the best boy. The very best." Rex's tail thumped weakly against the floor, his eyes seeking not Olivia's face, but the baby beyond her. Dr. Patel approached, the infant still secured to his chest, now calmer, though still whimpering softly. "I think she wants to see her hero," Dr. Patel said quietly, kneeling so that Rex could see the baby. The German Shepherd's eyes fixed on the tiny face, and remarkably his panting slowed, his body relaxing as if reassured that his mission was complete. Agent Lawson joined them, holstering her weapon. "We need to move. Now, there could be more of them." This time, there was no argument about Rex. Two agents gently lifted the injured dog into the lead SUV, followed by Dr. Patel with the baby, Olivia, and Agent Lawson. The second vehicle would transport Sophia and Officer Daniels, who had insisted on seeing the case through to the end. As they pulled away from the hospital, Olivia looked back at the chaos they were leaving behind. Police cars with flashing lights, hospital security swarming the garage, the white van being secured as evidence. It seemed impossible that just 12 hours ago, she had been driving to an ordinary shift at the hospital, unaware that her life was about to change forever. "Where are we going?" she asked Agent Lawson, who was on the phone, reporting the situation to her superiors. The agent covered the mouthpiece for a moment. "Secure FBI medical facility in Virginia. The baby will be safe there while we sort this out." She paused, then added, "Your dog too. Our veterinary team will treat him." Olivia nodded gratefully, her hand resting on Rex's fur. The German Shepherd had laid his head in her lap, but his eyes remained on the baby as they had from the first moment he'd found her. Dr. Patel checked the infant's vitals again, nodding with satisfaction. "She's remarkably resilient. Her temperature is normal, oxygen levels stable. Whatever genetic modifications Webb made, they don't seem to have harmed her health." "What will happen to her now?" Olivia asked quietly. "When all this is over." Agent Lawson finished her call and sighed heavily. "That depends on whether we find her mother. Emily Winters is still missing, and given what we now know about Webb and his organization, I'm concerned for her safety." "And if you don't find her?" Olivia pressed. "Then the child becomes a ward of the state," Agent Lawson replied. "But with her unique situation, she would likely remain under federal protection indefinitely." The thought of this tiny, innocent baby growing up in some government facility, studied and protected, but perhaps never truly loved, was unbearable. Olivia looked down at Rex, then at the baby, and felt something shift inside her. A decision forming, as instinctive and certain as Rex's had been when he first heard that faint cry in the night. "I want to apply to foster her," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "If Emily doesn't come back, I want to take care of her." Agent Lawson raised an eyebrow. "That's not a decision to make lightly. This child will need special care, constant protection. Her life will never be normal." "Neither will mine, after tonight," Olivia replied. "Besides, I think Rex has already made the decision for both of us." As if understanding her words, Rex lifted his head slightly, his amber eyes meeting hers with an intensity that needed no translation. They were bonded now, the three of them, by something more powerful than blood or law. 3 weeks later, in a small ceremony at the local courthouse, Olivia officially became the foster mother to the baby girl now named Hope. The road ahead would not be easy. Webb's organization had been dealt a severe blow, but not destroyed, and the secrets in Hope's DNA would always make her a target for those who valued science over humanity. But she would not face those challenges alone. Rex, now fully recovered from his injuries, had been officially registered as a service animal, allowing him to remain with Hope at all times. His extraordinary intelligence and protective instincts made him more than just a pet. He was Hope's guardian, a role he had chosen from the moment he detected her cry in the darkness. And in a small apartment now protected by state-of-the-art security systems, Olivia created a home for this unexpected family, a nurse, a baby with extraordinary genes, and a German Shepherd who had defied all odds to save a life he somehow knew was precious. The medal ceremony had been the mayor's idea, a public recognition of Rex's heroism that captured national attention. Pictures of the stoic German Shepherd receiving a special commendation, with baby Hope watching from Olivia's arms, went viral overnight. People around the world were moved by the story of the dog who had found an abandoned baby and fought to protect her against impossible odds. What the public didn't know What only a handful of federal agents, doctors, and Olivia herself knew was that the story wasn't over. The battle for Hope's future had only just begun. The final page of the note found with her had eventually been reconstructed in a forensic lab, revealing a warning that still sent chills down Olivia's spine whenever she thought of it. If you're reading this, you're in danger too. But tonight, as Olivia tucked Hope into her crib, those dangers seemed distant. Rex took his customary position on the floor beside the crib, his vigilant eyes sweeping the room one last time before settling into his watch. Olivia smiled at the pair, the tiny girl with a destiny no one could predict, and the dog who had changed everything with one remarkable decision on a cold, dark night. "Good night, my heroes," she whispered, leaving the nightlight on as she quietly closed the door. Outside the window, a figure watched from the shadows of a parked car across the street. Emily Winters pulled her coat tighter around her body, her heart aching as she observed the domestic scene through binoculars. Her daughter was safe, safer than she would ever be with her own mother. The evidence she had stolen from Webb's lab was secure, hidden where no one would think to look, ready to be revealed when the time was right. Until then, she would watch from afar, a ghost protecting her child in the only way she could, by staying dead to the world that hunted them both. She started the car and drove away, tears streaming down her face. One day, she promised herself, one day they would be reunited. But for now, Hope had found exactly what her name promised, in the arms of a nurse with a brave heart, and under the watchful gaze of a German shepherd who had somehow known, on that fateful night, that his destiny waited in the darkness.